This anime begins by showing us planet Earth and a mysterious object falling onto it. Then, it introduces us to the commander of an evil organization that fights daily to exterminate humanity and allow their native celestial body to take over the planet. However, today he was on his day off, and this man would queue up to see the pandas. He tells us that the first thing he will do is delight in delicacies in the sight, especially if it's with creatures of fluffy fur. The man was dedicated to recording pandas and was frequently observed by several children out of curiosity. A child asked him if his affection for pandas was getting out of hand, as he was taking too many photos and videos too frequently. This man comments that, after exterminating humans, he will increase the population of panda bears. The main objective of days off is to disconnect from the routine of work. If he had the misfortune of spotting a colleague, he had to slip away as fast as a shooting star. Then, if someone asks or inquires about what he does on his days off, he will play ignorant. However, when he's on his days off, he must be careful not to encounter the Rangers, who are humans foolish enough to seek fights daily. However, today he plans to refuse to fight and ignore them because he wants to prioritize the pandas. A red-haired boy approached the protagonist and asked if he was part of the evil organization, as he felt a very dark force around him. The protagonist remained silent and looked at the red-haired boy, emitting a dense dark aura. The red-haired boy tells him that he had the misfortune of encountering a ranger during his guard duty. He prepared to fight, and he tells the protagonist that he is the Red Ranger. However, the protagonist proposed a truce of peace just for today, explaining that he likes panda bears, so he doesn't want to disturb their peace with fighting. The ranger was surprised to hear this and mentioned that he also likes pandas. The protagonist praised him for having good taste and noticed that he had a ticket in his hand, asking if that was for the aquarium. The ranger hid this, and our protagonist deduced that the ranger was actually supposed to patrol the aquarium, but being absent-minded, he didn't realize it. The ranger was alarmed to hear this, and the protagonist recommended that he go to Warumono station and get off at the 9th stop to reach the aquarium. The black-haired man was about to leave, but the ranger stopped him, saying that he has a poor sense of direction and doesn't know how to get to the station. The protagonist decided to guide and accompany the Red Ranger to the station. After this, he returned to see the pandas, even if he had to wait in line, as it was his day off, and he wanted to make the most of it. Later, the protagonist went to a convenience store and checked every shelf, grabbed a basket, and started putting all the things he would need, wondering why there was so much variety of the same product. However, among all the merchandise in the store, there is one particular product that he likes. He went to the ice cream fridge and was surprised to see that the sweet potato ice cream had been replaced by another product. He tried to find the sweet potato ice cream, and the store employee noticed. She hoped that the protagonist would take the matcha ice cream, as it is the tastiest in her opinion. And just at that moment, the black-haired man decided to grab the ice cream and commented that if the ice cream doesn't turn out to be good enough, he will destroy the store. He approached the cashier to pay for the products he needed. She noticed that the protagonist took the matcha ice cream and was delighted. She took the opportunity to tell him that it's a delicious ice cream and recommended it to him. The black-haired man remained silent and accepted the girl's recommendation. Bidding her farewell, the protagonist went back to his apartment and sat in the living room to try the ice cream. He finished the ice cream completely and was surprised by the taste, saying that it's not so bad. He comments that in the near future, he will eliminate humanity from the earth, but he will probably leave that store until the end. At night, the Red Ranger visited the same store and would buy some meat fritters that were made to celebrate a collaboration with the Rangers. The store girl recognized the red-haired man and was amazed to see him. The Ranger took the opportunity to ask her for a location, and she directed him, but despite that, the Ranger got lost. The next day, the protagonist woke up and was glad to have another day off. He would go through his daily routine and prepared breakfast, realizing that he should buy more food because his refrigerator was empty. Here, they explain that the protagonist is on vacation and wants to make the most of it since he wants to investigate living beings called animals, as these did not exist on the planet he came from. But among all the animals, the one that caught his attention the most was the panda. It was the first time he had seen such a creature, so even though it was his day off, he decided to investigate pandas for a day. He tells us that this technically counts as part of the job since he is researching a species. For that reason, he has requested vacation time from his organization so that when he finishes, he can be compensated and recover the missing days. The protagonist continued to investigate the zoo and wondered why there were more species than just pandas. There, he realized that there were tigers and lions. He wondered why humans can find such dangerous animals, thinking they must have some intention and wrongly deduced that the zoo is actually an experimental laboratory. This would make him angry, unleashing his evil aura, which scared civilians, causing them to flee for their lives. The protagonist comments that if that's the case, he cannot let his guard down, but for now, his mission is the panda. The next day, he documented his research with a report. Despite it possibly being a laboratory, he wanted to visit it again for the pandas. Back to the present, this is how the protagonist gradually discovered the existence of pandas and his fondness for them. The protagonist decided to go to a supermarket, where the Red Ranger would stop him, thanking him for helping him find the aquarium. As a token of his gratitude, he bought him a gift. It was a box of panda-shaped cookies. He approached the protagonist and handed it to him. The protagonist took the box of cookies and entered the store. The ranger asked him if the peace truce still stands, but the protagonist did not respond and instead did his shopping, explaining that he won't fight with the rangers today because it's his day off. He tells us that he must now be more careful on his days off because he not only has to worry about the rangers, but also his own colleagues since he met one of them in the supermarket. The protagonist always wants to prioritize his days off over work because he wants to fully investigate pandas before extinguishing humanity. However, despite narrowly avoiding being discovered by his colleagues, he was annoyed that they interrupted his days off. In this way, he was about to explode with rage and exterminate humanity since amidst so much stress and interruptions, he couldn't buy a decent amount of food and could only buy some extra spicy noodles. Before exploding completely, his TV showed a panda documentary, and he decided to watch it, relaxing and forgetting what he was about to do. Several weeks later, the protagonist would have another day off. He decided to visit a place that humans called a shopping mall. Two children approached the protagonist and grabbed his coat, mistaking him for their father. The protagonist thought it was an enemy attack and was about to defend himself, but he stopped upon the confusion of being called father. They asked the protagonist to buy them ice cream. He asked them if their parents had never taught them not to accept food from strangers, which the children, who were siblings, denied. This annoyed the protagonist a bit, questioning what parents do to educate the children of the planet. He decided to buy ice cream for the children and thought about taking them to the Lost Children's Center. The girl would trip and drop her ice cream, starting to cry. The protagonist asked her if she was okay, feigning calm and seriousness on the outside but feeling panicked inside. The boy told the protagonist that his sister would probably cheer up if they ate at that store. He decided to take the girl there. After that, he left them at the Lost Children's Center. The siblings bid farewell to the black-haired man, saying they would see him again soon. The protagonist knew that would never happen, but he was glad to hear it. After this, the protagonist left. The children remained serious as they watched our protagonist leave, saying that in the end, he's not so evil. The boy commented that it's normal since not all villains are the same. They were only watching him today, but the next time they crossed paths with him, they would fight. At that moment, the Red Ranger appeared, happy that they finally returned, and he left with the children, who turned out to be other rangers. Meanwhile, we see the protagonist in the souvenir shop, finding a section dedicated to pandas. There he found a shirt featuring a panda and its cub. This moved the protagonist a little, who didn't hesitate to take the panda shirt. "Dear mother, who rests cryogenically frozen on our distant homeworld, how are you?" These were the words of a child, for he was finally going to be able to travel to Earth. And not only that, he had a job in the evil organization of which he was proud. He was eager to return home to tell everyone about his travels and accomplishments, but he acknowledges that it's not too easy to travel from one planet to Earth, and vice versa. It's also not very easy to relate to the members of the organization, as they don't even know the name of the person in charge. This is because he has such high power and ego that allow him to rise above others. For that reason, they usually call him General out of respect. This general was our protagonist, who was fighting on his own with all the rangers. We switch scenes to the tower of the evil organization, where we see the general in his office full of anger. One of his colleagues, who is an albino, entered the office to have lunch with him, but the protagonist refused, arguing that he was very busy. He blamed himself for not being able to take a personal day. And they show us that he was referring to a raffle to be able to see the pandas in person and interact with them, especially with that panda that was about to give birth soon, and the winner of the raffle could see the newborn cub. We switch scenes to the same child as before, who was tired of so much paperwork and reports. He was the only one working, as the rest of his colleagues had gone to lunch. The protagonist went to the offices and found the child. He decided to ask him if he was the new one who had recently joined the organization. The child was frightened and at the same time proud to see the general again. The protagonist scolded him because his work hours had ended long ago, and he needed him to leave. The boy explained that he wanted to finish at least one more report before leaving, apologizing for being so slow to write. The general took the report and reviewed it, realizing they were optional reports. The protagonist advised him to take breaks and not overdo it with reports since most of the reports weren't so necessary to be delivered on the same day. After all, the homeworld wouldn't annex Earth to its domains in just one day, and he clarified that these orders are because they are in a war of attrition, so he must take care of his body and mind not to end up burnt out. As a reward for his efforts, he gave him a day off and asked him to make an effort to enjoy it. The child wondered how he could make the most of his day off, so he researched using the organization's computer and connecting to the internet, discovering something that caught his attention. 2 days later, the boy went to the general's office to tell him that he went to the zoo and there he met the pandas. He clarified in his report that he would like to return to that place someday. He also mentioned that he knows his fondness for pandas, so he was curious to see what they were like. So, as a thank you for the day off, he gave him a box of panda cookies. The protagonist looked at the box and congratulated him, saying it wasn't bad at all. The child couldn't bear the embarrassment anymore and left the office totally red. The rest of his colleagues noticed and approached him to see if he was okay, as he melted in front of them. Here they tell us that one of this child's dreams is to become the right hand of the general, and wants to strive more every day to be able to work with him. Later, we see the protagonist at home trying the cookies that the newcomer gave him. However, he wasn't able to eat the cookies because the panda design was too adorable, and he couldn't eat them, so he left each cookie on the floor and waited for them to expire. Some weeks later, we see the protagonist arriving at an apartment and falling to the floor from exhaustion. He crawled on the floor and commented that he wanted a panda as a pet. He needed it for occasions when he came home tired from work. If he had a panda, he would be too happy because he could hug it, and that for him is like a dream. However, he would realize that reducing a panda to a pet would be unworthy for the species. He was clear about the goal that, when he exterminated humanity, he would increase the panda population in the world and they would live with them. The protagonist pondered this idea carefully. He didn't think it was a bad idea for there to be a place where pandas could roam freely and be their friends. Little by little, without realizing it, the protagonist fell asleep, fantasizing about how that world full of pandas would be, where he could play with them, eat, hang out, chat, or just relax. The general soon woke up and realized that it was already dawn. He tells us that after that sudden nap, he renewed his spirits to exterminate humanity, and would like to take the day off and go to the zoo. And that's what he did. He took the day off, however, he encountered a very serious question, to the point where he couldn't stop thinking about it, and that was wondering what color the tails of pandas are. He understood that they used to be white, but he wasn't sure if he should believe in this answer, since after all, he found it strange that a panda would have a white tail despite having black ears and the rest of its limbs. He refused to believe in any external answer until he could confirm it in person, so he bought an annual pass. The protagonist asked the panda to show its tail and showed his card. He waited for 2 hours sitting and eating everything. He wondered if he was becoming a nuisance to the other visitors after spending too much time there. He questioned this because he noticed that some workers and security guards were staring at him. In addition to that, in those 2 hours, he took so many photos of the pandas that he almost had no battery left on his phone. When he saw the panda make a gesture, he decided to take more photos, completely draining the battery of his phone, which turned off. At that moment, the panda stood up and was about to turn around, but simply decided to sit down, which discouraged not only the protagonist but also the rest of the visitors. The general waited there for some more time, interpreting everything as a message from the panda and believed that he visited the panda on those days when he just wants to sit and do nothing. However, he wanted to see its tail to know what color it was and felt that everything was a test they were making him take to measure his patience. The rest of the visitors were spending their day peacefully with their families and children, buying panda-related items. 3 hours later, we see that the protagonist still hasn't moved from his spot, waiting for the panda to show its tail. At that moment, both he and a child became tense when they saw the panda stand up. The bear began to walk and climbed onto a log. To climb it, it had to turn around. It was at that moment that the protagonist could see the color of the panda's tail, surprised that it was white. The child was in the same situation. They both looked at each other. They didn't exchange words, as the look was enough for them to communicate, and they both fist bumped, as a sign of praise for having good tastes in animals. Later, the child bid farewell to the protagonist. The latter wrote his report that same afternoon, where he recounted that it was all a tough battle. After resolving his doubt, he decided to explore the rest of the zoo to meet the other animals, visiting the rabbit's house. Once there, the protagonist would like a specific rabbit, which had the same colors as a panda. The caretaker of these rabbits appeared and asked the visitors if anyone was interested in playing with them. The caretaker clarified that adults can also come in. The protagonist decided to enter the rabbit's house, and the caretaker warned him that he could play with them as he pleased, as long as he didn't have to lift the rabbit while holding it. The protagonist was surprised to see that he had a bunch of rabbits around him. He wondered if this was another test, as he had to walk without stepping on the rabbits. The caretaker noticed and took away some rabbits. She told the protagonist that he was too popular for the rabbits, as they wouldn't let him walk. The caretaker would give him advice on how to treat the rabbits. The general crouched down, and the child from the previous time appeared. He entered the rabbit's house and sat next to the protagonist, saying that the best way to start gaining the trust of the rabbits is by stroking their backs, explaining that this is because rabbits like to be petted on the back through their fur. When they get used to it, they like to be petted on the head and cheeks. The protagonist, upon seeing the child, recognized him, as he was the same one who also wanted to see the panda's tail. Out of curiosity, the protagonist asked the child if he was a zoologist. This surprised the child, saying no, as he is still underage. However, he would like to become a veterinarian when he grows up. The protagonist remained silent. The child explained that his mom always tells him that becoming a veterinarian is impossible. The general decided to call the child doctor and asked him to teach him how to pet and gain the trust of the rabbits. The child was surprised by the nickname and asked why he was called doctor. The protagonist explained that he doesn't know many things about animals, so he needed someone to teach him, and who better than an aspiring doctor? This excited the child, and he would give the explanation to the protagonist. While this was happening, the visitors gradually entered the rabbit's house and played with them too. The general gained the trust of one of the rabbits and was surprised at how soft their fur was. He commented that he didn't think petting a rabbit would feel so comforting. He said that Earth is a very remarkable planet. He thought about using the rabbits for work. However, he wondered if pandas would be just as soft. The child also asked himself the same question at the same time as the protagonist. They both looked at each other again and fist bumped. Gradually it was getting dark, and the child finally said goodbye to the protagonist. The latter tells us that when the day comes that he must exterminate humanity. If the child managed to become a veterinarian, he could spare him, but he denied this possibility since he was sent to Earth to end humans. Several weeks later, we see the protagonist in his office. The newcomer from the organization decided to peek to observe the general, noticing his cold expression. He assumed that the protagonist was thinking about how to eradicate humans, and they show us that, in reality, the protagonist was thinking about how to convince the organization's employees to bring rabbits to work. On a rainy night, the protagonist was walking down a street full of sheds and found the Red Ranger there. The latter was distracted looking at the rain, but was surprised to see the general. The protagonist stopped. He tells us that it's his day off and he would have loved to escape quickly, but he lost that opportunity by encountering the Ranger. The Red Ranger prepared to fight, saying that they finally met again. He asked the protagonist to fight on that same street, but he refused by raising his hand and asked for another truce for today. The Red Ranger commented that this time there are no pandas or people on the street and asked if he intends to flee. He explains that his mission and the reason he trained is to defeat the invaders who are part of the evil organization. The protagonist asked him to calm down a bit. He says he wants a truce for today, as he doesn't want to work. But besides that, there's a bigger reason why he can't fight right now, and it's because he's carrying 2 cartons of eggs in his bag. He says he likes to boil them slowly. The Red Ranger comments that boiled eggs prepared that way are usually very good. The general replies that the biggest problem with boiling eggs is that it depends a lot on how and who prepares it. He is currently practicing to boil better eggs. The Red Ranger wished him luck with that, and the protagonist thanked him, as he can't afford to break the eggs. He asked him to wait on that same street and left. The Ranger stayed to wait for a long time, wondering if he fled. The protagonist appeared to give the Ranger an umbrella and some food. He gave him directions on how to find the subway station and then left. The Ranger stopped him to ask if he didn't want to fight, and the protagonist replied no, as he is still on his day off. We see a sunny day after an intense rain. Our protagonist woke up to the singing of birds and complained that it was too cold. He tried to turn on the heating, taking advantage of having the control next to his bed. But as soon as he took his hand out, he quickly covered himself again. It was too cold for his liking. He was somewhat annoyed since if he stayed in bed, he wouldn't enjoy his day off, so he mustered up the courage and quickly grabbed the control, managing to turn on the heating, then wrapped up as much as he could and used his cell phone to watch a daily panda video, as this was his routine. The video was about a panda doing funny things, eating, etc. Suddenly, the protagonist received a call from Rooney. He was infuriated because his daily panda video session was interrupted. Then he worried that his colleagues might realize he was having a day off. He didn't hesitate to hang up the call and continued with the video. Rooney called him again. The protagonist hung up once more. Rooney insisted on calling him again. Each call was rejected by the protagonist, and it went on for a long while until he decided to answer. Rooney was glad that he finally answered a call, and the protagonist told him that he had become a nuisance and drove him desperate with so many calls, reminding him that he doesn't have the permission to call him on his days off. While saying this, a hologram of Rooney appeared above the cell phone. He said that he already knew that. He would realize that the protagonist had not turned on the camera and asked him if something was wrong, as he couldn't see him through the screen, and asked if his cell phone was broken. The protagonist stated he wasn't sure what he was referring to. Rooney deduced that he was probably doing it on purpose. Our protagonist, annoyed, warned him that if he didn't need anything, then he would hang up in 2 seconds. Rooney was alarmed and tried to stop him, saying that he wanted to talk to him about the appearance of an earth monster. This caught the protagonist's attention and asked him to continue, but he only had 5 minutes. Rooney explains that he had been investigating rumors about a monster that appears in winter and enters human homes. The protagonist asked if that monster was someone powerful. Rooney affirmed it, saying that the monster uses heat to attract humans and then traps them in its stomach. Our protagonist comments that this monster could be of help after all since it eats humans. Rooney tells him that he was thinking they could use it as a weapon for the organization. However, he let it take over him and would say it embarrassed, confessing that the monster is currently eating him from the waist down. This surprised the protagonist, who was alarmed and got out of bed, scolded him for not having notified him of this before, and asked for his location. Rooney says he's in the control room. This took the protagonist by surprise, as he didn't expect such a monster to already be in the headquarters. He quickly got ready and asked for the full report. Rooney asked him if he was going to go to the headquarters. The protagonist affirmed it and asked him to hold on as much as he could. Rooney asked if he could bring him tangerines on the way. The protagonist stopped and asked why he needed the tangerines. Rooney explains that this food is apparently the only thing that can feed the monster. Despite knowing it, he forgot to buy it. Our protagonist, somewhat annoyed, scolded him, since if he knew how to manipulate the enemy with its favorite food, how could he forget about the tangerine? However, he asked him to cheer up, as just yesterday he bought a box of tangerines. Quickly, the protagonist left his apartment and used his great strength to jump to the headquarters. An electric storm surrounded the building. Our protagonist managed to arrive in time and broke down the door, finding Rooney sitting in his office. He thanked him for coming and asked how he could be freed from the winter monster. The protagonist remained silent. Rooney explained that if he gets up, he freezes. He had been wanting to go to the bathroom for a while and didn't know what to do. He trusted him because, out of the entire organization, he was the one who knew human culture the best, so he must have some idea on how to counter the threats. The protagonist approached, and Rooney praised him, commenting that it had been a while since he had seen him with his hair down. Our protagonist gave Rooney a hard hit on the head and would give him the tangerines. The protagonist checked the monster while eating a tangerine. It turned out to be a table with its tablecloth. At night, we see the protagonist walking down the street, sighing as he saw the air freeze. There he met a couple eating a panda bun, which belonged to a limited edition food. The protagonist was surprised to hear this, and the woman mentioned that these buns could be found at the store nearby. Confused, the protagonist decided to look it up on his phone. The guy asked what the panda bun was filled with, and the woman explained it was meat. Our protagonist was delighted with the bun and did not hesitate to go to the nearest store, finding the panda buns. He stared at it, and the storekeeper explained that the limited edition ones are tastier than usual, so she recommended buying one. The protagonist praised her for knowing the subject and then left, saying he would come to buy a bun when he was ready. This was because it grossed him out to see a panda being broken apart. A few days later, he returned to the same store and bought several buns. Upon leaving, he tried a normal meat bun and was surprised that it was tasty. So, the next day, he visited the store to order pizza buns. As the days went by, he ordered different buns of various flavors to see what he would face. Many days later, the protagonist visited the store ready to eat the panda buns. It was then he realized they were no longer available. He left the place disappointed in himself because just when he had gathered the courage to eat the panda bun, they stopped selling it. Several weeks later, we see him walking down a busy street heading to the supermarket, returning after visiting the zoo and needing food for the house. There, he found some buns, surprised that they could be sold in a store other than the usual one. He did not hesitate to buy them, as they were packages that came with 4 buns and seemed like a bargain. Upon grabbing the package, he smiled mischievously. 2 girls in the background saw the protagonist's expression and did not hesitate to flee in fear. The next day, our protagonist woke up wanting to eat the Chinese buns he bought at the supermarket. He went down to the kitchen thinking about the buns and prepared a plate of them, following the package's instructions. While waiting for them to be ready, he stretched a bit. When the microwave signaled that the buns were ready, he did not hesitate to grab the plate, but he was horrified to see that they had become smaller and fell to his knees on the floor, embarrassed by what he had done. However, he was somewhat relieved that at least they still tasted like buns. Meanwhile, we see the Red Ranger preparing some Chinese buns in the microwave, and just like the protagonist, he was horrified to see that they had become small. He wondered why that happened, and his brothers explained that it was because he wrapped them too tightly. In doing so, a vacuum is created that crushes it. Upon hearing this, the Ranger apologized to the bun for having committed such a crime. The Blue Ranger appeared, mocking the Red Ranger for not being able to make buns properly. He offered to prepare them for the entire team. However, the brothers refused, saying he makes them too hard. They showed a tool that ensures the buns come out fluffy and maintain their shape. At the same time, the protagonist discovered this tool, a plastic container. He was pleased to see the buns kept a perfect shape, unaware such a device existed, and was amazed at how fluffy the buns turned out. Several weeks later, we see the protagonist walking down the street and encountering a snowman, which he mistook for a strange creature. He approached the snowman to examine it and made a snowball in front of the snowman, mimicked the snowman with the snowball, and then left. He stopped after a few seconds, realizing it was the best creation he had made with a snowball, so he took it home and stored it in his refrigerator, hoping it would remain perfect. However, as time passed, the snowman melted, which took the protagonist by surprise. He went to work utterly annoyed. During the Christmas celebration, the protagonist saw all the civilians enjoying the day and watched as snow began to fall. Although he wanted to deny it, the melting of his creation affected him because he felt he had lost a loved one. A month later, the protagonist enjoyed his day off by visiting the zoo as usual to relax with the pandas. On the way, he encountered an elderly man struggling to climb the stairs with a heavy load. The protagonist offered to help, and the elderly man did not hesitate to accept. Seeing the man's difficulty in climbing the stairs, he decided to carry the bag and the elderly man on his back. The man thanked him for being a good person and asked if he could do him a favor when he was free. He agreed and began to feel strange when the elderly man stroked his hair in gratitude. Although he wanted to deny it, deep down, he liked the sensation. He took the man to his destination and said goodbye, wondering if perhaps the man had mistaken him for his grandson or something similar. He quickly covered his eyes to hide his sadness, lamenting that humans are so ephemeral. The next day, the protagonist dreamed of pandas and counted each one. Suddenly, his dream changed to a neighborhood decorated for Christmas, and he wondered where he was, believing he had been transported to a strange dimension. There he met Santa, who greeted him, saying he was happy to see him and asked if he could help him again. The protagonist realized it was the same person he had helped, and Santa offered him clothes to withstand the cold. The protagonist put them on, and Santa quickly took the protagonist with the reindeer, who were carrying gifts for the children. Our protagonist carried the gifts and accompanied the elves, decorated a Christmas tree, and made a giant snowman. He asked Santa if he does all that work, which Santa confirmed. The protagonist advised him to retire, as he is too old. Santa replied that he would like to continue working as long as there are children who believe in his existence. Even if it's just a story they forget when they grow up, as long as they believe he exists, he will live in their hearts and fulfill every wish, one by one. Then, he thanked the protagonist for his help, confessing he knows his secret of being from another planet, and wished him a Merry Christmas. After this, Santa left on his reindeer. The protagonist woke up with a sore body from the work he had done, unaware that he had a gift in his house sent and personally written by Santa for being kind-hearted despite his origin. We see a boy returning from work completely exhausted. He went to the supermarket and bought several things. He explains to us that he recently started working in the spring. He was eager to live on his own for once. After work, he planned to go out drinking with his colleagues from the company. He would even go to the gym. On his days off, he wanted to visit all kinds of places, or that was the plan he had. But he had no more strength due to tiredness, and if he didn't return home to do the laundry, he would run out of underwear. He also tells us that he would have liked to cook, but when he gets home, he doesn't even have time for that. He couldn't continue living like this, as it was too expensive for him. In the end, he always gave up and became depressed because of how badly he did everything. In one of the aisles, he came across our protagonist. The boy trembled with fear when he saw him. He thought he was a dangerous person from the city, like a gang member. The supermarket manager approached the protagonist to greet him. The boy was surprised that the protagonist got along well with the manager. The protagonist asked the girl what had happened to the shelves of Chinese buns. She explains that they were removed because the promotion had ended. They only had buns until early April. These words discouraged the protagonist. The boy was impressed that the protagonist looked tremendously disappointed for not being able to eat buns. The girl apologized to the protagonist, as she knew that those buns were his favorites, as he always bought them after work. The boy identified with the protagonist and was glad not to be the only one who buys food on the way home from work. Our protagonist explains that the buns were like his reward for working hard and he needed them to keep going. The girl tried to cheer him up by telling him that he could look for another type of reward and revealed to him that there are new seasonal frozen products. The protagonist looked up and decided to follow the girl to show him the new products. The boy saw them leave and wondered if he should also reward himself, as he always focused on the negative and never thought about himself. He decided to buy a dessert he liked and felt a little happier. The next day, the boy returned to the supermarket much more animated and bought another dessert. The manager approached him to explain that those desserts are on promotion, and at the moment they have a cherry promotion. The boy was surprised to hear that there were more flavors and asked if the one he had in his hand was tasty. She recommended it to him, saying it's her favorite. We change scene to the protagonist walking through a square while tasting a cherry-flavored milkshake, which was part of the supermarket promotions. He wondered if cherries tasted like that. Suddenly, he came across a cherry tree and decided to try the leaf. He wanted to know if they both tasted the same. The next night, the same boy checked the store's products, wondering what he could reward himself with today. The protagonist entered the store and the girl greeted him. She mentioned that she was a little worried about him, as she didn't know if he was going to come to buy. The boy noticed that the manager had something important to tell the protagonist and thought it would be a declaration of love. However, he was disappointed to hear that she only wanted to promote new ice creams. The protagonist became interested and asked her to tell him more about it. The boy couldn't help but follow them and listen to the conversation out of curiosity, finding out about the existence of an ice cream with fruit. The protagonist decided to choose a different ice cream than the one the girl recommended. The latter apologized to him, thinking she had messed up. But the protagonist asked her not to worry, as he will also try the ice cream she recommended, since she always gets it right with her recommendations. The girl, seeing that the protagonist wanted to buy the two new ice creams, tried to stop him, explaining that it was a mistake. The protagonist revealed to her that he shouldn't attach importance to differences of opinion, as he would have visited the store another day anyway to buy the missing new ice cream. After seeing them leave, the boy approached the freezer and rewarded himself with the same ice creams as the protagonist. We see our protagonist returning to his apartment and observing the ice creams, wondering which one to try first, as tomorrow would be his first day off in a long time. The next morning, he decided to visit a cafe in search of something called latte art. Upon entering the store, he was greeted by the employees and took a seat. He saw the coffee machine and was surprised. He had never seen anything like it and wondered what kind of technology it was. He even thought it could be some sort of experimental instrument. The employee asked the protagonist how he wanted his coffee, and he gave him the instructions. Our protagonist watched carefully as the employee used the machine, and upon seeing the coffee's reaction to heating, he couldn't help but ask what it was. The employee explained that it was a siphon coffee maker, and although filtered coffee is good, they usually make coffee this way. The employee served a hot cup to another customer who was there, and the protagonist was somewhat amazed that there was more than one way to make coffee. However, he couldn't help but feel threatened as he was totally unfamiliar with the sounds of the machines and didn't understand what was happening. After a while, the employee served the coffee to the protagonist, along with a panda design. The dark-haired man didn't hesitate to take a photo of the coffee, saying it looked as adorable as the rumors said. After taking several photos, he wondered how to drink that coffee and couldn't help but imitate the man next to him. But he was horrified to see that as he drank the coffee, the panda drawing deformed. This seemed to him like a too cruel torture. Soon, he heard the voice of the panda that was in the coffee, asking the protagonist to calm down, as that was their inevitable destiny. Our protagonist carefully observed the coffee, watching as the panda design disappeared. He couldn't help but feel bad and drank all the coffee at once. The man next to the protagonist was moved by the situation and decided to pay for another similar coffee for the protagonist. Later, we see him returning to his apartment struggling with several bags. He explains that he got so excited about the panda design coffee that he ended up buying too much. All the bags weighed so much that he doubted his shoulder would dislocate at some point, although he knew this could happen, as he also carried a large amount of milk to make stew, cream, and some almond jelly. He wanted to try something, as anything made in stew seemed delicious to him, although he knew that baked rice, pasta, and omelets could be used in a wide variety of dishes. Starting next week, he would work for several days without rest and wanted to cook in advance a dish that would be worth it. He planned that when he made creams and flans, he would decorate them with pandas, as he was inspired by the panda design on the coffee. He had some hope that his experiment would turn out well, although he anticipated a certain level of failure, so he bought extra milk for that reason. In addition to that, he wanted to serve all the dishes he would make in panda dishes that he found by chance in a store. Upon arriving at his tired apartment, he looked at the stairs leading to the second floor. He felt he was facing a great enemy, and wondered why humans didn't install elevators in places like this. However, he didn't want to give up, much less would he let himself be defeated. He took a breath and placed a foot on the step, slowly climbing the stairs, feeling how the bags dug forcefully into his shoulders and hands. It was too exhausting of a task. Due to the effort, he felt like his fingers would break at any moment. To not give up, he reminded himself why he bought so many extra things, motivating himself with the thought of making stew in a panda bowl. He asked his own body to hold on a little longer, looked up, and could see the end of his long journey. After so much effort, he finally managed to climb the last step and couldn't help but smile in relief. However, he found a boy looking at him strangely. Later, during a blood moon, we see the protagonist fighting against the rangers, specifically the red one. He ran alongside him on the warehouse roofs and tried to strike the red ranger, who dodged the attack and jumped to the ground. The protagonist chased him, and they clashed their blows, creating shockwaves that swept everything in their path. The Red Ranger unleashed a flurry of blows against the protagonist, who managed to dodge them all without much effort, and when he saw the opportunity, he defeated him. We switch scenes to our protagonist on his day off. He decided to visit a new area of the city he hadn't been to before. He wanted to contemplate the cherry blossoms as humans usually do, but he realized the flowers had already disappeared. He felt somewhat disappointed, as he had even prepared a snack for the occasion. Then we see a scene of the protagonist watching the news, where the reporter gave advice on how to enjoy cherry trees, including carrying some food. Our protagonist felt a little relieved to see that cherry blossoms were still falling from the tree, but he noticed a girl there, playing. She was picking up each flower and felt observed. She turned to look at the protagonist, and both watched each other for a while without saying a word. The girl approached him and took the box with food. The protagonist understood what was going on, so he decided to sit on the bench next to the girl and shared his food with her. The protagonist asked her if her parents never told her not to accept food from strangers. She replied that they did, and the protagonist asked her if she was too hungry to ignore that rule, which the girl affirmed. Our protagonist touched his face to relax a bit, as he was bothered by the idea that parents would leave a child hungry, and he promised her that he would exterminate humanity in her name. The girl mentioned that she wanted more food, and the protagonist told her she could eat everything in the box. The child did nothing but continue eating and asked if he wanted to see the cherry trees. The protagonist replied yes, although he realized he had arrived too late. He decided to pour himself something to drink and shared this with the girl, asking her to be careful while eating. The girl mentioned that she would show him the cherry trees. She showed her hand, where there were a bunch of cherry blossoms, and these flew away, guided by the wind. The protagonist stood watching the cherry blossoms. Here, he explains to us that, unlike the flora of his home planet, which retains its flowers until they wither, on Earth there existed the cherry tree, which scatters its petals shortly after blooming. He had read that according to humans, this event is considered elegant, and he had no doubt that this was the case, as he was fascinated by how the cherry blossoms moved and adorned the environment. The protagonist comments that seeing the flowers fall was something beautiful, and he realized that the girl had disappeared, leaving only a nest of cherry blossoms. He wondered if she had returned home. During the following days, he went to the same place several times with food, but he never saw the girl again. So, he hopes to meet her again next year when the cherry trees bloom again. Here, we discover that the girl who was with the protagonist was the spirit of the tree, who decided to show the event to the protagonist. We are introduced to the Pink Ranger named Aurora. We see her standing atop a hill and she would summon her pink suit. She would look disdainfully at the monsters working for the evil organization, and she tells us about defeating the protagonist. To achieve this, she patrols every day and fights any threat she encounters, needing only one blow to send any opponent flying. However, she has gradually become tired of the work, mainly because the suit is too tight for her body and she was tired of fighting senselessly. She decided to take a day off and went to her apartment to watch a series of magical girls. Aurora found all the girls in the program cute and reveals that deep down she has always wanted to be a magical girl. Aurora lamented wearing the ranger suit with so little style, and contacted her organization to report that she defeated the enemy. She decided to continue patrolling the city until nightfall. She returned to her apartment and made herself a magic wand, imitating the design of one of her favorite magical girl's wands. Aurora comments that she will keep that wand in her bag as a lucky charm. Aurora decided to go out and met the Blue Ranger, who asked her where she wanted to go. Aurora didn't want to say anything, fearing that the whole team would start teasing her if they found out she liked magical girls. The Blue Ranger complained about Aurora, saying she never shows any sweetness. Aurora ignored him, mentioning that if he wanted to chat with someone adorable, he could go to the Red Ranger. The twins appeared to scold the Blue Ranger for trying to pick a fight with Aurora and asked her where she was going. Aurora explained that she was trying to substitute for the Black Ranger in her patrol. After this, she left. Aurora walked the streets sadly and tells us that she recognizes that she is not someone adorable. She checked every corner and alley of the block, trying to find another magic wand that she lost. She ended up in a park and there she found a sleeping cat on a bench. She wanted to pet it, but when she saw that the feline refused, she decided to leave. She went to the police station to ask about the lost and found box. The only officers on duty returned Aurora her magic wand, explaining that someone had recently dropped it off at the station and told her that they were probably still nearby. Upon hearing this, Aurora ran off to find that person. Meanwhile, the Red Ranger returned to the apartment and the twins told him about the fight between Blue and Aurora. One of the twins was worried that Aurora might commit a crime because of Blue. Red decided to scold Blue, saying he can't make kids cry. However, Blue defended himself, explaining that the only person crying is him, and it's due to the pain. The twins thought about calling the Black Ranger to look for Aurora. Blue denied this, explaining that if Rosa didn't return in 10 minutes, he would go look for her. Back with Aurora, she continued searching for the person who left the magic wand at the police station, trying to find someone who matched the description given by the officers. As she searched, she saw the protagonist in the distance and ran towards him, taking him by surprise. Our protagonist stayed alert and looked at Aurora. She asked him if he was the one who left the magic wand with the police. The protagonist affirmed it and wanted to know if she was the owner. Aurora thanked him for rescuing the magic wand. The black-haired guy advised her to be more careful with the things she treasures so they don't get lost again. Aurora fell silent, accepting the scolding, but she was surprised to hear the protagonist call her a magical girl. It was the first time anyone had called her that, and she wondered if the protagonist knew the series. She couldn't help but feel glad that someone called her that because deep down, she always wished for it. She decided to return to the apartment, taking care of her wand. She thought she should store it better next time so it wouldn't get lost. On the way back, she met Blue, who scolded her for being out on the street in the early hours, clarifying that the rest of the team was worried about her. He asked if she found what she was looking for, and Aurora affirmed it. They returned together to the apartment, and Aurora was careful not to be discovered by Blue. The next day, we see the protagonist walking to the zoo to see the pandas. We are shown a flashback where the protagonist spent some time observing one and wondered what kind of power pandas had to be so adorable, even to someone from another planet. Back in the present, the protagonist tells us that lately the streets he usually travels are filling up with pandas, whether they are figures, food, accessories, clothes, etc. However, that wasn't the only thing because he also encountered many posters of the Magical Girls series. Out of curiosity, he looked at the poster and realized that one of the characters is a panda with wings. He judged the design and concluded that pandas with wings look even more adorable. He reached the Unohara commercial district and was surprised to find the area celebrating a panda fair. Out of curiosity, the protagonist went to the fair and encountered a panda mascot, which was greeting children by shaking their hands. The protagonist joined to shake hands with the panda, but it gave him a festival stamp instead. The attendant explained that he needed to collect 10 stamps, and if he did, he could exchange them for a special prize. The protagonist felt somewhat disappointed to only receive one stamp and read the event rules, discovering that he only needed to buy products from the commercial district to win a prize, which would be handed out by pandas. He understood the concept and visited every store to buy things, prioritizing food, buying panda-shaped bread. Although he found it difficult to choose, he bought a panda-shaped donut and was amazed to see a panda-shaped bread mold. He didn't like the idea much, but he thought it would give him more pandas, so he decided to buy several breads with different thicknesses. He visited a Chinese store to buy panda items, went to a supermarket to buy panda products, and also bought panda sweets. He checked the stamp and realized he only needed one more purchase to win the prize. Later, he finished filling the stamp and went to exchange it for his prize. The elderly woman showed him a list of items he could choose from. The protagonist reviewed them. They were panda mugs, glasses, blankets, picnic lunchboxes, bags, and colored pencils, all with a panda aesthetic. Here he suffered a crisis because he didn't know what to choose from so many things. He was like this for a long time and decided to exchange the stamp for a panda mug. After this, he returned to his apartment happily, stored all the things he bought, and went to sleep. The next morning, the protagonist took another day off and decided to clean his apartment. Over the month, he had been working so much that he neglected his apartment, so he decided to do some cleaning. He took a vacuum cleaner and started dusting. He used the vacuum cleaner according to the tips he had heard, as he was aware that vacuums suck harder when pulling than when pushing. He was meticulous with the cleaning until it was time to clean the sofa. There he had a panda plush, and unintentionally, he hit the sofa, causing the plush to fall to the floor. The protagonist was alarmed, so he stopped cleaning to wash his hands and put the plush back in its place. He checked the closet and organized all his clothes. After finishing, he remembered he didn't have any cleaning fluid. He found several boxes of food with panda drawings on them. These boxes were empty, and he thought about throwing them away. However, he decided to keep them since most of them were gifts from his coworkers. He got a bucket of water and cleaned the windows for several hours. He decided to take a break and browse the internet to watch panda videos. While looking for a video of his interest, he came across a recent one, which was a special video recorded by the city's panda caretakers. He didn't hesitate to watch the entire video, forgetting that he had left clothes in the washing machine and causing a small accident. Later, we see the protagonist sitting on a bench admiring the scenery. He was somewhat relieved that the clothes weren't damaged, but they had to stay outside longer than usual. Suddenly, he sensed someone was by his side. He turned around and saw a cat, which sat down next to him. He was surprised that a cat would sit with him. He knew that the attitude and charm of these animals made them difficult to deal with, but at the same time, they were favorites of humans. Our protagonist thought of a plan to exterminate humanity using this weakness against humans. Furthermore, he liked the cat as a potential recruit because its color resembled that of a panda. The protagonist cleared his throat and greeted the cat, saying it was a beautiful day. The feline simply remained seated in silence and looked away. Our protagonist took this as a kind of challenge, as no other living being had dared to ignore him and look away. He saw this as a strength as well because it could come in handy for the extermination plan. However, he thought about the possibility of having offended the cat, as he knew they existed since ancient times and feared he had been rude. He started treating the cat as a sir. The feline glanced at him for a few seconds but continued to ignore him. The protagonist took this as an achievement because he managed to make such an ancient being look at him. He would feel superior to humans because of this, but he was surprised when the cat started meowing several times. Our protagonist thought that cats spoke another language and felt stupid for forgetting such an obvious detail. He felt even worse because he feared the cat wouldn't understand his speech due to the language difference. However, he believed the cat was meowing out of courtesy and thought of a goodwill response on the topic. The protagonist took some time to learn the language of cats, mastering it in seconds. Soon, he started meowing along with the cat, and they communicated in that way. All of this was being observed by Aurora, who was hiding in a tree. She covered her mouth to avoid being discovered. She found it too adorable to see the protagonist meowing with the cat, and she discovered it by chance during her patrol out. We see our protagonist sitting on a bench resting after grocery shopping. He was checking his phone looking at the panda photos he had in his gallery. Soon he would notice that there were more people with him in the park. They were two children talking about someone named Oriheim and Hikaboshi, who wouldn't see each other this year. Both were discussing whether they would see each other again. The protagonist wondered who Oriheim and Hikaboshi were. Unknowingly, he ended up being entertained by the children's conversation. The boy tells his friend that they won't be able to see each other because the rain prevents it, but the girl remained firm in saying that they would. Our protagonist continued to look at the panda photos while listening to the discussion until he realized that the boy harbored resentment towards his parents as he compared the Oriheim and Hikaboshi event with his family. The girl asked if he would move on the 7th. The boy answered yes, explaining that he would go to live with his grandparents and their home was on the outskirts of the city. The girl asked what would happen to his parents, and the boy revealed that they wouldn't accompany him. She commented that in that case, she would go to accompany him to say goodbye, but the boy refused, telling her that it would rain that day. The girl insisted on accompanying him, disregarding the rain, and approached the boy to tell him that she is not Orihime, swearing that she will go to see him even if it rains. The boy thanked the girl for lending him the console and returned it to her, but she told him he could keep it. The boy refused and left the console in the park before leaving. Later, we see the protagonist walking back to his apartment. He wondered who Orihime and Hikaboshi were. The only thing he could discover from his research is that they were lazy on the way. He found a poster promoting the Tanabata festival, where Orihime and Hikaboshi would be. A lady came out of the butcher's shop to offer the protagonist the opportunity to write his wish on a letter. The protagonist asked what he should do, and the lady told him that he should write a wish on the paper, then he should place it on the tree. The protagonist decided to sit down to think of a wish. Later, he would write his own and hang the letter on the tree. We switch scenes to the same boy as before, who was waiting for his grandparents. He had given up on seeing his friend, but he was surprised that she did show up, albeit a little late. Here we find out that this farewell happened thanks to the protagonist, as he had wished for those two children to see each other again. At night, we see the Red Ranger writing his wish. He had been writing 12 letters and the twins appeared to scold him, as he was using too much paper. Then they asked him if one wish wasn't enough. The Red Ranger didn't know what to say and the twins recommended that he wish not to have such bad orientation. The Red Ranger explained that he was just about to make that wish, but Blue had already done it for him. So he decided to write several wishes that benefited each of his companions and acquaintances. Several weeks later, we see a group of boats sailing near a beach. Everyone was enjoying the day and our protagonist visited the beach to see what the experience was like. He looked directly at the sun and a girl approached to make a sandcastle nearby. The protagonist decided to do the same and play with her, mimicking what she was building. The girl took this as a competition, so she dug the sand to make a kind of igloo. The protagonist was surprised to see what she was doing, so he quickly did the same, throwing sand everywhere until he succeeded. The girl started smiling as she saw the protagonist achieve it, so she made a sand pyramid in seconds. The protagonist was amazed and continued playing with the girl. Our protagonist also made his sand pyramid with some difficulty, while the girl made a castle. At sunset, they both finished making their castles. At the end, they praised each other while watching the sunset for the last time before they had to leave. Our protagonist became sad seeing the sandcastles collapse from the waves, and the girl cheered him up, telling him that next time they would make another castle together. The protagonist felt better and promised that when that time comes, they will make the best castle the world has ever seen. We switch scenes to another character. We are introduced to Trigger, a member of the high command of the evil organization. We see him facing off against the Rangers in the company of the protagonist. The Black Ranger tried to attack Trigger, but the latter dodged his attack and they both exchanged blows in the air. After a few seconds, they were forced to land. He tells us that day after day he fights against the Rangers on behalf of his home planet. However, he was annoyed to have to work with the protagonist, as he considered him an idiot. Although everyone in the organization called him General, he didn't see himself as such and hated him to death. The Rangers prepared to attack all at once. Pink and Red approached our protagonist to attack him, but he effortlessly blocked their blows. Trigger wondered why they called the protagonist a general and set out to prove that he is a better fighter than him. After the confrontation, we see the protagonist and Trigger blending in with their human appearances. Trigger asks the protagonist why he was walking among the Earthlings. He explains that it is still too early to return to his apartment. In addition to that, if he jumped between buildings to get home faster, it would attract too much attention. Trigger reminded him that, as an evil organization, they have portals that help them travel more. The protagonist reveals that those portals are under maintenance and take some time. Trigger fell silent upon hearing this, as he had been made a fool of, and mentions that he is unlucky to see him without the organization's uniform. The protagonist affirmed his bad luck. Trigger wondered why the protagonist had his hair so unkempt, as it looked nothing like the hair he usually wears when he is the general. He comments that, with that appearance, he looks more like a pet. The protagonist abruptly stopped and this alarmed Trigger. The protagonist mentioned that there is something important ahead. Trigger prepared himself, believing it was an ambush by the Rangers, but in reality, it was a van selling panda-shaped crepes. The protagonist showed him the panda crepes. Trigger didn't understand what he meant, and the protagonist asked if he really couldn't admire the cuteness of a panda. Trigger explains that he doesn't see anything adorable about a panda and clarifies that just because of that, he shouldn't consider himself better than him. Our protagonist ignored him and went to buy a crepe. Trigger stayed to observe. He was slightly surprised that the general liked crepes and sweets. He considered this inferior and thought about betraying him to his subordinates, as that way, he would lose all his reputation. The protagonist interrupted his thoughts to ask Trigger for help holding his phone and his crepe, as he wanted to take a photo. Trigger agreed to help him, and the protagonist took a picture. Trigger annoyedly asked him to warn him before taking photos, as he needed to prepare the angle and his bangs to look good. The protagonist reassured him, saying he didn't need to worry as he just wanted to take a photo of the crepe. Trigger returned the crepe and, annoyed, asked him to stay silent and eat. Then he wondered why he was so interested in the crepe. The protagonist stared at the crepe, unsure what to do, and Trigger asked him what he was doing, noticing his nervousness. He said he wanted to eat the crepe but felt embarrassed to do so because he never knew where to start. Trigger was taken aback by this and wondered if it was all a complex plan by the protagonist to drive him crazy. Our protagonist noticed that Trigger was somewhat upset and asked if he also wanted a crepe. Trigger denied this and asked him to hurry up and eat to return to headquarters as soon as possible. The protagonist agreed and began to eat the crepe. Trigger remained annoyed watching him, not knowing that the companion he hated the most had such a human side. A side he would have preferred not to see. Our protagonist confessed to Trigger that he prefers to spend his days off like this and warned him that if for any reason they happened to meet on the street, he should not speak to him, as he prefers to enjoy his days off alone. Trigger asked him which subordinate of the evil organization would dare to talk to him outside of work and scolded him for being conceited back in the organization's offices. We see the protagonist in Rooney's office. The latter was reviewing several books and told the protagonist that he had been researching the earth creatures he liked. The protagonist asked why he was researching pandas. Rooney didn't mention anything about it and asked if he found it difficult to look pandas in the eyes. Our protagonist unleashed a powerful evil aura, ready to fight. Rooney ignored the evil aura and commented that when he's on his days off, he finds it difficult to look pandas in the eyes, and in that sense, he's like pandas. Our protagonist smiled at these words. He hadn't taken the comparison as an insult. After this conversation, the protagonist went to his office, finishing drafting several documents on his supercomputer, typing at great speed as he wanted to leave at the time assigned to buy ice cream and dinner food. This was because at night, a special documentary about pandas will be aired, and he couldn't miss the opportunity to watch it live. For safety, he programmed a recording in case he couldn't leave on time. However, he wanted to do everything possible to make it. Our protagonist was focused on the document. A creature from the evil organization jumped on the protagonist's desk and started cheering him on, as it had never seen him so focused on work. The protagonist stopped to pet the creature and continued with the work. In the evening, we see the protagonist resting in his bed somewhat sad because a problem had arisen just before he could leave work, and he had to work late, so he missed the panda documentary. He was even sadder because he had to work the next day and needed to fall asleep as soon as possible. But he couldn't do it. He tried to use old tricks from his planet to fall asleep quickly. However, none worked, and he wondered why he couldn't sleep if he was too exhausted to do so. While pondering several things, he wondered about the situation of his home planet. Soon he remembered that one of the human tricks to fall asleep is counting animals before bed. The protagonist began counting pandas to fall asleep. However, it was of no use as he had to go to work without having slept. Rooney came out of his office and found the protagonist staggering. He asked what had happened because he looked much more terrifying than usual. The protagonist mentioned that he couldn't sleep and counted more pandas than exist on the entire Earth. Rooney didn't understand what he meant. Our protagonist explained that humans, when they can't sleep, count animals. Rooney understood what he meant and explained that this originates from the similarity in sound between sheep and sleep in English. This annoyed the protagonist, as counting pandas wouldn't help. Rooney recommended that he go take another nap, suggesting he could use the Kotatsu monster. The protagonist asked where it was and why he still kept it. Rooney mentioned he had it in his office and explained that he kept it because he felt comfortable working on it. Soon, Rooney noticed that the protagonist went silent out of nowhere and realized he had fallen asleep standing up. Our protagonist dreamed he was surrounded by 100 pandas, and together they looked at the stars. One of those stars shone brighter than usual and explained to all the pandas that that star is his home, or at least, that's what he see the Red Ranger running through the forest and leaping to avoid an enemy attack. Several groups ambushed him, including Warumono, our protagonist. He was surprised by how fast the Red Ranger was, so he would attack him from a distance. He dodged the attacks with difficulty, using Warumono's own attacks to his advantage. When he saw an opportunity, he approached him to try to kick him, but Warumono dodged and managed to wound the Red Ranger, forcing him to retreat after a powerful blow. He would try to finish him off in one move, but this was a deception, as he wanted to catch the Red Ranger off guard to trap him, managing to corner him. The Red Ranger fought with all his might to free himself from the grip, as he didn't want to lose the fight. He was forced to try to transform, and Warumono prepared his finishing move to prevent his transformation. Suddenly, both felt the presence of someone else in the area and got scared. They decided to interrupt their confrontation to follow that presence with their gaze. They both saw a child crying because of the situation. Warumono felt a little bad about this, as he realized that the fight against the Red Ranger was so evenly matched that it ended up in the city zoo without them noticing. He decided to release the ranger for the sake of the child's well-being and let him take care of the situation. The ranger helped the child and asked him to flee, but the boy would ask him about the location of his mother. Both understood that the child had gotten lost in the zoo. Warumono noticed that the child had a panda plush toy, which motivated him to want to help. The Red Ranger thought Warumono's gaze was a threat, and he didn't hesitate to protect the child, saying not to harm children because they are the future of the earth. Warumono took this as a challenge and looked at the ranger disdainfully. Before the confrontation continued, the zookeeper announced over a megaphone the disappearance of a child. The child's name is Keitaro. The Red Ranger decided to protect him and discovered that he is a fan of pandas. Warumono overheard this conversation and sighed a little. He decided to explain to the Red Ranger that he should take the child to the Lost Children's booth and indicated how to get there. He did this only because Keitaro is a fan of pandas. After that, Warumono would return to his human form and ask the ranger to take the opportunity to flee as well, clarifying that he would not continue fighting because he did not want to destroy the panda habitat. The Red Ranger decided to make amends with Warumono and left with Keitaro. They both took different routes. Warumono took the opportunity to call his organization and inform them that he was unable to defeat the Red Ranger in a fight. He would explain that he was on his way to the organization, but the employees mentioned that it was time to go home. Warumono didn't hesitate to take advantage of the extra free time he had and went to the souvenir shop to buy panda plush toys. He decided to feel the texture of the plush toys and chose the softest one because it relaxed him too much. He wondered what kind of spell or power it could be since he felt agitated carrying a panda plush toy and couldn't let go of it. He had no choice but to buy 2 panda plush toys and leave the place. A few weeks later, in the villain's tower, we see Warumono and Rooney resting in the main office. Rooney noticed Warumono was quite exhausted from work and advised him to go home, but he refused, saying he hadn't finished his work yet. Rooney understood, as due to the meeting the Villains League had, everything was delayed and drafting documents became much longer. Out of curiosity, Rooney asked Warumono if pandas didn't have 3 habitats in the territories of the Villains League. He remained silent to listen, and Rooney mentioned that there was a 4th habitat. This took Warumono by surprise, and he asked for more information about it. Rooney told him that in that 4th habitat, there are creatures similar to pandas. This angered Warumono, and he asked for the location. Rooney decided to show him his laptop. Warumono would take this mission personally and decided to go to that habitat to see them with his own eyes. Rooney was surprised to see that Warumono's expression was one of extreme malice, which was accompanied by a laugh from him. The next day, Warumono would take the day off to investigate this new habitat, going to the other side of the city. As he walked through the streets, he encountered people and buildings he had never seen before, eventually reaching Asakusa Haniashiki, the place where the 4th habitat supposedly was. He noticed that the place was still closed and thought he had arrived too early. He noticed that near the entrance there was a figure of a panda, so he took some photos. He decided to wait at the entrance for the site to open, and once it did, he would be the first person to enter. Finding himself in a huge park, he looked at all the attractions and wondered where the pandas were. He was a little suspicious of the site's loneliness and the absence of pandas, thinking that the information Rooney had given him was false or some kind of mistake due to tiredness. But he didn't want to dismiss things just yet and preferred to investigate the area. Soon, civilians began to enter the park, mostly couples. He analyzed their behavior and wondered if the park's function was to ride the attractions. He wasn't sure about riding these attractions since his priority was the pandas, but he decided to do it to avoid raising suspicions among the civilians. He went to buy an adult ticket. While waiting in line, he overheard a child talking about the park's horses, which caught Warumono's attention. He deduced that if there were horses, then pandas could be somewhere too. When he got his ticket, he decided to look for the horse attraction and would ride it. He noticed a civilian greeting him and returned the same greeting. He would soon find out that there were more creatures in the park, so he decided to investigate them. That's how he got on several attractions involving swans. He wondered why the civilians greeted him so much. He went to a haunted house and investigated it. But not finding anything of interest, he decided to focus on other attractions, discovering one that caught his attention. He would ride that attraction and was surprised that the machine spun abruptly. He made an effort to withstand the gravity of the spin, taking it as a kind of human challenge. When he got out of that attraction, he staggered a bit, feeling completely dizzy. He would get on the roller coaster and was surprised that it also demanded physical effort. He wondered what kind of training humans underwent to create machines like that. Gradually, he began to get frustrated because he couldn't find the pandas. When he got off the attraction, he felt very dizzy and took a break on a bench. He had been overwhelmed by the roller coaster. He was somewhat worried about this, believing that the park could be some kind of training center for future rangers, as the attractions were a kind of training for him. While resting, an old man would sit next to Warumono and ask if it was his first time visiting the park, which alarmed Warumono, who didn't know how to react. The old man explained that in amusement parks, anyone can become a child again, and commented that he would like to be young enough to ride the attractions again. But even though he can no longer enjoy the attractions, he enjoys seeing others being happy. Warumono watched the civilians enjoying their day. The old man told him that the amusement park was created to bring smiles and happiness to everyone. It was a place away from the daily routine and had the ability to bring out the child in any adult. He clarified that he enjoyed hearing others laugh or seeing them relax on their days off, as it brought back memories. Warumono looked at the old man and realized that he had become a child. The old man told him that there were pandas in the park and he liked being able to ride on them. Warumono was surprised by this and believed it to be some kind of supernatural force. Soon he realized that the child was actually the old man's grandson, who had wandered off without him noticing. Warumono said goodbye to the old man and wondered why he had talked to him. With the old man's explanation, he concluded that amusement parks were not a training center for rangers, which relieved him. However, he was somewhat regretful for not having asked about the location of the pandas. He decided to leave the park and went to the souvenir shop. Finding there all things panda-related, from plush toys to statues and food, Warumono found a panda keychain and wondered what it was, mistaking it for a panda's tail. He thought these keychains were a new species of pandas. Soon, he discovered the gachapons and was surprised to see pandas trapped in tiny capsules. He took this as a cruel method of torture, which fueled his desire to exterminate humans. Quickly, he emptied all his coins and wanted to free all the pandas. It took him several hours to achieve it, but he finally managed to release all the pandas and took photos of them. He felt relieved knowing he had freed some pandas from their captivity. He wondered why all the pandas looked so identical, but he didn't dwell on it, as they were adorable anyway. He remembered the panda-shaped keychains and began to search for them all over the park. He put all his efforts into the search, and after several attempts, he took a break, wondering where pandas of that kind could be. A park employee approached Warumono and asked if something was wrong. He took the opportunity to tell her about his panda search, which confused the girl at first, but she soon understood what he meant and decided to guide him there. Warumono followed her. He passed through a narrow alley and wondered if this new species of panda lived in tight places until he reached a hall where, finally, were the pandas he was looking for. The girl explained that these pandas were actually cars and anyone could ride them. Warumono decided to approach them, wondering how they were kept in captivity, including a cub. He asked the girl if these pandas could be ridden, to which the girl affirmed. Warumono decided to give it a try, getting into the car, which would move automatically. After several hours, Warumono returned to the organization's tower, where he would tell Rooney what he had discovered at the amusement park, explaining that all the machines were attractions. Rooney was surprised by this, but he was equally relieved to know that it wasn't a dangerous place. Warumono mentioned that he ended up liking the park, and was impressed that Earth had more wonders than the planet they came from. He proposed to investigate the wonders of Earth and gave Rooney this task, deciding to give him a panda figurine to accompany him. The next day, at the zoo, Warumono would visit the same place, realizing he had been there dozens of times. But this had helped him to study the pandas and notice the differences in each one. He went to the panda habitat, noticing there were new pandas. He analyzed them carefully and realized that one of them looked like Trigger, a member of the Villains League High Command. Soon, he got distracted when he saw the panda starting to play and took several photos of it. Back at work, Warumono encountered Trigger in one of the corridors of the tower, remembering the panda that resembled him in the zoo and mocked him. Trigger didn't understand why Warumono was laughing, and that annoyed him to the point where the rest of the organization members had to intervene to stop him and calm him down. Warumono would have a panda in front of him, which began to caress and clean itself with a cloth. That panda would eventually remove the black spots from its fur and become completely white. This surprised Warumono so much that he dropped his phone. We change scenes and see him in the villain's tower, telling Rooney about the dream he had about the panda that removed its spots. Rooney ate a tangerine and explained to Warumono that dreams are the deepest manifestations of the mind, so he found it strange that he dreamed something like that and wanted to know if something terrible had happened to him. With some anger, Warumono affirmed this and decided to tell him what happened. In the morning, we see him hanging his clothes in his apartment until he decides to check his phone, thinking of watching a video of pandas as he usually does. A video caught his attention. It was a compilation of things pandas did at the zoo in his city. He watched the entire video and was affected by the cuteness. He couldn't help but roll on the floor trying to contain his emotions and decided to make himself a coffee to achieve it. Suddenly, he received a notification on his phone and checked it. It was a notice that the pandas had been returned to their habitat because the attraction had become too popular at the zoo and was causing problems. Back to the present, Warumono affirmed to Rooney that the news of the pandas being returned to their habitat caused him more harm than expected. Rooney understood his pain and continued eating tangerines with Warumono. Seeing that he was very upset, Rooney decided to challenge him to a duel to see who could peel the skin off cleanly. Warumono accepted and showed how his tangerine was perfectly trimmed, but he was surprised when Rooney, without even moving, made the peel open, revealing that he had eaten the tangerine. Warumono deduced that the peel had always been empty and that all Rooney did was gather it to make it look like a normal tangerine. He stared at Rooney, who could sense Warumono's curiosity and commented that he couldn't reveal his secrets. He would then tease Warumono, but the latter just started laughing, totally confident. Rooney worried a little, wondering what Warumono had done to be like this. The dark-haired man showed him a second tangerine and combined it with the one he already had, forming the shape of a panda. Rooney took this seriously and had an evenly matched duel with Warumono, where both peeled the tangerines and made different shapes of things they knew about the human world. All of this was being listened to by Warumono's henchmen, who, upon hearing all the commotion Rooney and Warumono were making, wondered if they were creating new armed life forms. The confrontation continued until Rooney asked for the final round. Warumono accepted this, and both used all their power and knowledge to make the ultimate figure. Warumono ended up winning and would eat all the tangerines with Rooney. The latter wondered if the rest of their colleagues would be interested in making figures with the tangerines. Later, we see Trigger with one of his comrades. Trigger was alarmed to see that his comrade had a tangerine figure similar to a caterpillar and asked what that creature was. His comrade tried to calm him down, explaining that it's just a tangerine and he learned to make figures thanks to Rooney. Trigger remained serious about this and scolded Rooney, asking him not to teach the henchmen things that could confuse them with real creatures. Later on, we see Warumono in his office studying some statistics about the base. Rooney entered the office to ask Warumono if everyone in the organization would celebrate Christmas, as he wanted to give some gifts to his colleagues. This surprised Warumono a bit, as he didn't know what they were, and Rooney explained to him that it was a tradition that Earthlings usually do during Christmas. He clarified that he knew about this because he constantly studies the customs and traditions of humans before exterminating them, with the intention of storing all the information in future documents and books that could serve his home planet. After offering this idea, he left to attend an urgent meeting, leaving Warumono pondering the situation, wondering if it was a good idea to have a gift exchange. He left his office and walked around for a while, accompanied by some bodyguards, still pondering if sharing gifts was a good idea. The next day, we see him at the usual market, buying some exclusive Christmas yogurts. After shopping, he returned to his apartment to take a shower and ponder Rooney's proposal. He stayed like that all day until he fell asleep. Soon he dreamed he was in a snowy village and would reunite with Santa. He took the opportunity to help him distribute gifts and asked for advice on choosing the perfect gift for his colleagues. Santa seemed impressed that someone like Warumono would ask that, and asked him to imagine the smiling face of the person he intended to give a gift to. Warumono did the same, but didn't quite understand what he meant. Santa noticed his confusion and explained that he should choose a gift that he knows will make his colleague happy, so when they open it, they'll be surprised. Warumono accepted this advice and asked Santa if he also chooses or receives gifts that make him happy. Santa started laughing, confirming this. He told him that the joke of gift exchanges during Christmas is to make everyone happy because that's the essence of a gift. Warumono wondered what gift Rooney would like and woke up realizing it was a bit late. Back at the villain's tower, Warumono would meet Rooney outside. They both stared at each other, and he asked the dark-haired man if he was ready for what they were going to do. Warumono affirmed this and handed his gift to Rooney, wishing him a Merry Christmas. Rooney did the same, and they both were surprised to find out they had gifted each other tangerines. They decided to go to an office to have a duel of tangerine figures. Warumono was somewhat disappointed in himself for giving the same gift to Rooney. To cheer up his colleague, Rooney mentioned that he could try a different gift next year and try to invite the others in the organization to participate. Warumono accepted the offer and ate the tangerines. Rooney realized there were too many tangerines for two people, so he shared them with his colleagues at work. This made the members happy, and they went to Rooney's office to eat tangerines with Warumono. At that moment, Trigger passed by, reading some documents, and upon hearing all the commotion, he wondered what was happening. He noticed two employees eating tangerines in one of the hallways and went to Rooney's office to confront him, but decided to calm down a bit upon seeing Warumono there too. The dark-haired man thought Trigger wanted tangerines, so he mentioned that they had all been eaten. Trigger didn't seem to understand the matter. Warumono approached him, saying he would have to settle for what he offers. Trigger extended his hand and received a panda-shaped candy. Warumono explained that the candy is milk-flavored, and it's the only flavor he could get at the store. Trigger, in a proud manner, responded to Warumono that he didn't want a gift from him. However, after closely examining the panda candy, he ended up succumbing to the cuteness of the packaging. At night, we see the Rangers resting with their Christmas gifts. The twins were the first to wake up, and upon seeing the boxes, they were delighted. They both hid under the blanket and debated whether they should open the gifts right away. After all, it wasn't yet daylight. After chatting about the topic for a while, they decided to wait until dawn to open the boxes. Later in the day, the twins went to the living room to open their gifts. The rest of the Rangers, for their part, also opened their gifts. All these boxes belonged to the Black Ranger, who wanted to celebrate Christmas with his teammates. Blue seemed a little embarrassed to receive a gift and commented that he was already an adult. But the Black Ranger corrected him, saying that, for Santa Claus, no one stops being a child. These words surprised both Red and Blue, as they didn't expect the Black Ranger to be a lover of Christmas. They had no choice but to accept his gifts and have fun with the rest of the team. Sometime later, we see Warumono sitting in a large hall. He would start a meeting with several other Warumonos. His goal was to create a plan to become friends with pandas definitively. But that wasn't all, as he wanted to capture the pandas and help them multiply for when humanity is exterminated. One Warumono protested the idea of capturing pandas and proposed capturing polar bears instead. He clarified that the best idea is to capture polar bears and have them multiply instead of pandas. Soon, more Warumonos joined the discussion, proposing capturing animals like red pandas, brown bears, polar bears, etc. The discussion among them remained heated until a Warumono with a teddy bear intervened, proposing that they turn all bears into plush toys and decorate the planet with them. The debate continued as they began to propose more animals and some human foods. The original Warumono seemed a little surprised by such an intense debate and decided to postpone it upon realizing they weren't going to reach an agreement. Warumono ended up waking up from his dream and stroked a panda plush toy. He used to do this to motivate himself before going to work. Warumono tells us that lately he has seen a stray cat near the market where he usually shops, so he decided to investigate a bit. He went to the back of the store to take care of the cat, but he was surprised to see someone else feeding the feline. It was the Black Ranger. He noticed Warumono's presence and greeted him. Warumono returned the greeting and approached the ranger to also take care of the cat. He decided to look at the feline closely, noticing that it was still as adorable as ever, and he couldn't take his eyes off of it. He wanted to pet it. When the cat finished eating, it started purring and rubbing against the Black Ranger. The ranger wondered if the cat might still be hungry and apologized, saying he had no more food. The cat's behavior surprised Warumono. He was jealous of the Black Ranger because he made it seem easy to approach a cat and earn its trust. The Black Ranger gave Warumono some more cat food and gave him some advice on how to approach the feline. Warumono asked the ranger why he lied about not having more food for the cat, but he refused to answer and simply left. Warumono quickly approached the cat and tried to feed it. The Black Ranger, named Black, returned to the base and met the twins, Mugi and Sora. Black was surprised to see them awake so early and asked if something had happened. Mugi replied that they just wanted to see him and talk to him for a while. Black carried them both and took them to their rooms when he noticed they had fallen asleep. Here we are told that Black is a cat lover and can't resist them. However, his reasons for being in that store were not precisely for the cat. He had received reports that Warumono frequented the store. He wondered why a villain acted so calmly and strangely with animals, even questioning if Warumono really liked cats. Meanwhile, we see Warumono feeding the cat. He was completely nervous and trembling as he watched the cat approach him closely to continue eating. He wasn't used to seeing a cat behave like that. Deep down, despite his pride, he was completely grateful to Black for giving him the opportunity to get close to the cat. Several days later, we see Rojo with a box of fortune cookies. He quickly threw these cookies at Warumono. The latter dodged all the ranger's attacks as best he could, as most of his attacks were powerful rays. Rojo would manage to hurt Warumono by catching him off guard and launched his ultimate attack, managing to defeat him. Warumono was sent flying and fell to the ground defeated. However, he started laughing as he heard Rojo celebrating his victory. He quickly got up and showed his ring to the ranger, causing an intense blinding glow. Then we see that the Red Ranger was asleep on the base's sofa, talking in his sleep, which worried the rest of the group, who performed small rituals to see if he was okay or not. Sora mentioned that Rojo was surely very stressed about hunting Warumono, to the point where he dreamed about him and their fights. Rosa seemed irritated by the fact that Rojo talked in his sleep and asked the group to try to wake him up. As she finished her sentence, Rojo woke up and looked around completely confused. Soon he reacted and told the group that he had finally found a way to defeat Warumono after so long. He asked to be allowed to patrol the streets, but Azul disagreed with this and recommended that he stay at the base. Meanwhile, in the Unohara commercial district, we see civilians enjoying the festival they were celebrating in the streets about demons. Warumono stood out among them. We see him buying some beans in a store, where they promised to give him powers to repel demons. This caught his attention, and he thought about sending samples of the product to his organization to find out what it was made of. Two elderly women approached Warumono to offer him some matcha. He decided to try it and was surprised to see that the matcha became elastic. It was the first time he had seen something like that, and he confused the melted cheese with a biological weapon disguised as food. Soon, the matcha broke, and Warumono treated himself to it. He was amazed by the taste and didn't hesitate to eat the rest. The old ladies considered Warumono to be a tender person, so they gave him several plates with different flavors of matcha. He didn't hesitate to devour each of the samples offered to him and enjoyed them with all his heart. He had never tasted anything like it in his life and praised the cooking skills of the humans. The elderly women explained to Warumono that there are different flavors of matcha, such as some covered with grated radish, fermented soy, or green soybean paste. After the festival, Warumono returned home completely full. He couldn't help but feel bad since he had overeaten. Several days later, Warumono was in his apartment researching about the land and making statistics. After so much research, he decided to take a break and remembered he had bought an ice cream recently just for his break time. Before eating the ice cream, he went for his panda mug and prepared himself a hot coffee. After finishing preparing the coffee, he went to the living room and combined the ice cream with the coffee. Before he could even take the first bite, a call interrupted his break. He was amazed to see messages coming in one after another without stopping, wondering if there was an emergency. Quickly, Warumono approached his computer and started attending to all the emergencies. When he finished, he thought about eating his ice cream before it melted, but more messages kept coming, and he wondered what was happening now. An intense evil aura surrounded Warumono to enhance his physical abilities so he could work faster, but emergencies kept appearing more and more, which made him desperate. After many hours, he finally had his break. Soon he remembered his ice cream and thought that with time it had melted. He didn't hesitate to reveal his true form, completely angry about the messages he received and would make the whole city tremble with his power. However, before causing chaos, he realized that the ice cream had not completely melted, only the edges. He didn't hesitate to eat the ice cream and relaxed a bit, feeling that the flavor was not lost. At night, we see Warumono meditating in the living room of his apartment. He had dinner earlier than usual, and now he was hungry before ending the day, something that annoyed him a little. Not only that, he couldn't sleep because he wasn't tired enough to do so. And the worst part was that it was too late to eat something since it was 9 o'clock at night. Warumono decided to take out panda noodles he had stored in the fridge and questioned whether he should eat or not. He debated intensely about this, imagining a good and bad panda giving him advice. The good panda advised him not to eat noodles at such late hours of the night. However, the bad panda reminded him that if he was hungry, he wouldn't be able to do any activity he wanted, not even sleep. The good one quickly mentioned that if he was very hungry, he could eat the jelly from the fridge. The bad one argued with the other, saying that the jelly would not be enough to satisfy Warumono's hunger. He had no choice but to prepare the noodles and sat near the window of his apartment to look at the landscape, reflecting a little on his mission on Earth. He had very little will to exterminate humanity the longer he lived there. He decided not to think more about that matter and ate the noodles. Then he used his phone to watch some panda videos, realizing it was already 11 o'clock at night. He had to take a bath before going to sleep, but he didn't feel like it. He was too lazy to do anything after so much work. A panda plush started talking to Warumono and recommended that he take a bath. He was convinced and did it. After leaving the bathroom, he returned to the living room to continue his panda videos session. He remembered he had to brush his teeth before going to bed, but he didn't feel like doing it. When he saw the panda plush, he immediately brushed his teeth. While doing so, he dried his hair and remembered he had left some shrimp for dinner. He decided to heat them in the microwave, but suddenly the power went out. This alarmed Warumono, who thought it was an enemy attack, and took cover. He realized that none of the appliances were working. He looked around carefully, unable to notice anyone's presence nearby, which confused him. He deduced that the enemy could be outside, so he jumped out of his apartment window and used his true form. He was ready to fight. However, he was surprised to find no one and everything was silent. Warumono began to suspect that there was no one nearby and investigated the whole place, discovering that someone had lowered the light switches. He still had the idea that there must be someone nearby, but after checking his phone, he found out that there was a blackout throughout the city, so he let the situation pass. Later, we see that in the midst of that blackout, Black was petting the cat from the beginning. At the Iman shopping center, we see Rosa going up the floors to attend the Valentine's fair that was taking place. The whole place was filled with families and couples. Rosa wondered if there would be anything cute she could buy, especially something not too expensive. As she browsed the shelves, she thought about getting a box of assorted chocolates for the staff. One box caught her eye, and she decided to buy it. This box was for Blue. She continued exploring the fair to find a good quality product for Red, as she wanted to surprise him with something nice for being the leader of the organization. In one section of the fair, she found a world map wrapped in a box. She thought it would be a good joke to remind Red that he had a terrible sense of direction. After thinking it over, she opted to buy a box of chocolates instead, as it was her safest option. She would later think of a classy gift that Black might like. After a while, she would buy the gift for him and the twins. Suddenly, she came across a shelf dedicated to magical girls. She was surprised to see chocolates themed around the magical girls, along with sweets. There were some products like books and more. Rosa thought about buying something related to the magical girls. Out of nowhere, she remembered the conversation she had with Warumono, who recommended her not to lose what she cherished. She decided to take a book about the magical girls and couldn't help but blush at the thought of Warumono, feeling embarrassed with herself for not being able to give him a gift. Back at the ranger base, Rosa met Blue and handed him his Valentine's gift. He was somewhat surprised to see that his gift was a chocolate frame and asked if she would give bigger and more expensive gifts to others. Rosa affirmed this, saying she would give real gifts to the others. Blue praised her for her decision, which confused Rosa. She asked what the praise was for and simply left. Blue looked at the chocolate frame, knowing that Rosa hated it, and wondered why she decided to buy him a gift despite that, and especially why she had the courage to give him a gift in person. He decided not to delve further into the matter and ate the chocolate. Rosa returned angrily and asked Blue to thank her for the gift. He wasn't surprised by this behavior, but thanked her. On White Day, we see Blue, Red, and the twins visiting different stores to buy a gift for Rosa. The twins wondered what kind of chocolate they could buy for her. Red commented that he already had Rosa's gift decided. Blue, on the other hand, was still thinking of something she might like. The group split up to buy different gifts. One of the twins decided to help Blue and advised him to buy a strawberry sweet, as it was currently trendy among girls. With this information, Blue began to analyze the strawberry sweets that Rosa might like. The twins went to find Red to accompany him so he wouldn't get lost. Red mentioned that he was somewhat happy that Black recommended going to the Amon shopping center for good products. Both Red and the twins decided on the gift, contrary to Black, who was still thinking about the perfect gift. 2 hours later, the twins found him and asked why he hadn't decided on a gift yet. Blue explained that it was difficult for him to choose a gift because he knew that anything coming from him would anger Rosa, and he wanted to find something that wouldn't offend her. The twins asked him not to worry about that, as they were willing to speak well of him to Rosa. Blue was surprised by this and begged them not to mention his indecision. The twins decided to comply and noticed that Red wasn't following them. Quickly, the three searched the entire shopping center to find him. We see Red lost on the highest floors of the shopping center and wondered how he got there. Here, Blue's past is shown. We see several scientists gathered in a laboratory, discussing a future project. Blue was in this laboratory and tells us that when he gets nervous, his stomach hurts right away. On the day he became a ranger, he was so nervous that his mother had to give him stomach medicine, and his younger brother accompanied him so he wouldn't feel alone. He was heir to a ranger position, as his father was one, and during a mission, he never returned home. Black was the one who broke the news and decided to take care of Blue, as he was a very close friend of the family. In that laboratory, Black tells Blue that genetics have nothing to do with powers because there is a phenomenon in which, if a ranger from a previous generation disappears, their powers are inherited by the successors. This is because the energy of the rangers is stronger and vibrates more the closer the team is. He explains that within the organization, there are rules that require them to live and socialize to become closer, with the intention of maintaining the powers through the generations. Blue grew fond of Black, and thanks to him, he met Rosa, who was a much younger and more daring girl than him. He remembers perfectly that their first interaction was an argument about the costumes they were going to wear. Both he and Rosa were the first rangers of the new generation, so they had to detach themselves from their family relationships to live with Black at the ranger base. Blue explains that, at the beginning, everything was very complicated for him and Rosa, as they were just kids, and when they sought Black's attention, they didn't receive it because he was busy every day and consequently returned tired and fell asleep. Several years later, the twins joined the group just after they were born. They were selected to be the Green Ranger. Blue asked Black if it was okay to take care of babies and involve them in missions since they were young children. Rosa tells Blue that it doesn't matter because they are also children and work as rangers. Black explains that the twins emanate intense power to be Green Rangers. However, there was a detail. One of them is a girl and the other a boy, which could confuse the members of the laboratory. Blue asked Black if he could drop out of school because he wants to dedicate his life to being a ranger like his father. Black tells him that he must live his life as a normal person and clarifies that school is necessary to make friends of his own generation. Since a ranger's life is very risky, and he may never be able to return, for that reason, he must experience life to the fullest. Blue comments that he still has friends within the organization, including Rosa. Black explains that within the organization, they have a different relationship than what would be considered friendship. Several months later, Blue and Rosa were greeted by the scientists in the laboratory. They were both upset with each other over an argument they had at school and couldn't stand each other's presence. After all, they went to school together every day, trained together as rangers, took care of and raised the twins together, etc. While Blue and Rosa were on their way to the twins' room, they discovered 3 scientists talking about the new Red, who had been able to keep the enemy at bay and force them into inactivity. This conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a 4th scientist, who reveals that the twins disappeared. This surprised Blue and Rosa, who didn't hesitate to go look for them. The entire laboratory went on alert, and they started looking for the twins. Blue and Rosa went out into the city to look for them. There, she took the opportunity to ask Blue if he was still angry about the argument they had. Blue didn't know what she was referring to, and Rosa asked him if they could be friends and set aside their differences. Blue refused, explaining that they couldn't be friends because he saw her as his younger sister. This surprised Rosa, and before she could say anything, they were interrupted by a powerful green flash, which came from the twins, who were using their powers to cause chaos because they wanted to meet their parents. Blue and Rosa found the twins, both amazed to see how they merged into one body. The twins asked where their parents were, and Blue had to explain the situation, saying that they couldn't see their parents, but the laboratory staff and the other rangers would take care of them as one. Upon hearing this, the twins decided to separate. Blue and Rosa quickly took them back to the laboratory, relieved to have contained both of their powers. Later, Blue came out of the interrogation with Rosa. He commented that the twins were scared because they didn't see their parents, and probably that's why they caused chaos. Blue took the opportunity to ask Rosa if she liked being a ranger, which she denied. Blue wanted to know what she wanted to dedicate herself to or what she wanted to become. However, Rosa refused to tell him. At night, they met with Black at the base, and he rewarded them with sweets. He mentioned that he learned about what happened with the twins and had been studying what happened with the scientists. This caught the attention of both Rosa and Blue. Black explains that the power of the twins is divided between the two, and they are stronger when they decide to merge. He clarifies that he doesn't know what the future holds for the twins, as it was the first time something like this had happened, being a new power discovered for the Green Ranger's branch. Rosa took the opportunity to ask Black if they would ever meet Red someday, which he affirms. From that day on, Blue decided to focus more on his personal life and be as strong a ranger as his father to protect others. Back to the present, Rosa approached Blue to ask him a favor, calling him brother. He got a little stressed by this because he knew Rosa was in trouble, as there was no other reason she needed his help. We change scenes and see Black patrolling the city. He tells us that the previous generation of rangers was several years ago, and he was the only one left on the team. As a result, he was forced to look for a new generation that had inherited the rangers' powers. He admits that being the only adult was very difficult because he had to raise and deal with children, teach them the ranger life, train them, and more, but he also took on the role of father to them because he wanted them to enjoy their lives and not suffer tragedies like the previous generation. Black couldn't help but remember that incident and constantly lamented being the only survivor, but at the same time, he was somewhat happy to see how the new generation of rangers was promising, both as rangers and as people. Black took the opportunity to visit his comrades' graves and left several bouquets of flowers for each of them. He felt some fear of what could happen in the future because once the new generation becomes adults, the real missions will begin. He wasn't prepared to take them on their missions and have them accompany him, but he couldn't escape his duty as a ranger either. He looked up at the sky and asked his former comrades to give him all their strength to protect the new generation and prevent the tragedy from happening again. We see a blonde boy in a park observing a girl from afar. He wondered why that girl was always alone, looking at the civilians passing through the park with cherry blossom petals always falling around her. It intrigued him that cherry blossoms always accompanied the girl, as he knew that such flowers could only be seen for a short time. Suddenly, the boy noticed how a mysterious man approached her. He wondered who he was, That man was Warumono. The latter stood in front of the girl and began to chat with her. The boy wanted to know what they were talking about and was surprised to see Warumono handing her a box. The girl opened the box and took out food. The boy was surprised to see that the girl seemed very happy. He didn't hesitate to approach Warumono and called his attention by throwing a branch at his head. Warumono discreetly moved away from the girl to approach the boy and see what he wanted. The boy asked Warumono to talk to the cherry blossom girl, but Warumono refused, saying that he had just been hit on the head with a branch. The boy ignored Warumono's complaints and begged him to give a gift on his behalf. He showed him a mud ball. Warumono took the ball and asked why he wanted to give her something like that. The boy explained that he had put effort into making a mud triangle and believed she liked things in that shape. Warumono looked in the direction of the girl and thought about what the boy had said for a moment. He decided to approach her to deliver the gift. Later, he returned to the boy, telling him that next time he would have to deliver the gift himself, as he did not want to be someone's messenger. The boy ignored his complaints, as he wanted to know if the cherry blossom girl liked the gift. Warumono, somewhat annoyed, asked him to pay attention, and told him that apparently she liked the gift, although she seemed puzzled. The boy was relieved to hear this. Although he knew Warumono was somewhat right, he felt he was getting closer to knowing the girl, thanks to Warumono appearing by chance that day. Several days later, we see the same boy in the park making various geometric shapes with mud. Warumono passed by the park to distract himself and saw the boy. He approached him a little worried and asked if he had a family waiting for him at home, as he always saw him alone in the park. In addition, he recommended that the boy stop playing with mud and give the girl something edible. The boy didn't understand what he meant by giving her something edible, and Warumono took a cup from his coat. The boy asked what the cup was for. Warumono told him it was a string phone, clarifying that he would only help him this time, so he would be obligated to talk to her in person next time. The boy was surprised when he could hear someone's voice from the string phone. It was the cherry blossom girl. She greeted him and thanked him for the mud triangle he gave her. The boy didn't know what to say. He was totally frozen, as it was the first time he heard her voice. He didn't have the courage to speak until he remembered he couldn't stay long in the park. So, he gathered all his courage and finally talked to the girl. He assured her that he had been watching her and wanted to approach her, but didn't know how. The conversation continued naturally. Warumono knew he had fulfilled his purpose, so he left the park to observe everything. Sometime later, Warumono would return to the park and find that the tree where the boy used to be had been cut down. He noticed that the string phone was on the ground and followed the trail of the string until he found the girl. He was somewhat surprised to see her alone and sad under a tree. She had been waiting for the boy to return, but apparently he didn't. Warumono asked her what had happened. The girl explained that the boy had to leave because he was soon going to be turned into a road. She couldn't help but feel lonely and sad, so she decided to wither away. Warumono was surprised to see how the cherry blossom tree withered and finally died, revealing that all this time, those children were nothing more than the spirits of the park's trees. He couldn't help but feel bad about this outcome, as both of them had been cut down. Some months later, the boy would return to life. His body had been turned into a seat for people, but he was glad to be in the park. Soon, he would notice that the cherry blossom tree had withered. Warumono went to the park and met the boy again. He asked him what he was doing in the park, to which he mentioned that he had been turned into a seat and wanted to know what happened to the cherry blossom girl. Warumono revealed to him that she withered away due to his absence. The boy didn't want to believe him and approached the tree to check its condition. Warumono told him that it was very likely that she would not come back. The boy commented that it didn't matter, as all he wanted was to be in the same place as her, next to the tree where she always was. We change scenes, and on a rainy day, we see Warumono returning to his apartment. He would start hearing some strange noises. They were from a cat. He wondered if the cat was on the verge of death from hypothermia. He quickly followed the cat's noises and reached a small forest. There he found the cat lying on the ground, getting wet. He was surprised to see the cat, as it looked very different from the ones he had seen, and thought it could be some kind of robot. He knew that technology wasn't so advanced to make a robot so identical to a cat, so he thought about the idea that it could be something from another planet. The cat began to rise with difficulty and communicated with Warumono, calling him a human. He wasn't surprised by this, but he had a slight feeling that he should leave and not interfere in the robot's affairs. He decided to withdraw for safety. However, in the end, he returned to leave his umbrella and protected the robot from the cold and rain. Later, he went back to his apartment. The next day, Warumono returned to the same place to retrieve his umbrella and found the cat again. He asked him why he came back, and Warumono said he just wanted to retrieve his umbrella. He took the opportunity to ask why the cat was on planet Earth. The weak cat told him he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just waiting for his final destination to arrive because he was soon going to run out of energy. Warumono apologized for bothering him and thought about leaving. The cat stopped him to return the umbrella, but Warumono refused, saying he could keep it since it was going to rain again soon. Here, we see a scene of an experiment called C-018. Two scientists, covered with radiation-resistant gear, were experimenting with the cat and subjecting it to intense tests. When they got what they wanted, they didn't hesitate to get rid of it, throwing it into the street. The cat wandered sadly through the entire city, regretting not having the strength to defeat a human and seek revenge. In the present, the cat woke up feeling that it was regaining energy and got on guard when it saw Warumono with him. He asked him why he was helping him. Warumono mentioned that he was just charging the batteries. The cat was surprised to notice that it could move freely and all its wounds healed. Now that he had energy, he didn't hesitate to attack Warumono, biting his arm and electrocuting him. Warumono was surprised by the attack, but let himself be hurt, resisting the electric shocks. The cat was surprised to see that Warumono didn't seem to suffer much, so he tried to do as much damage as possible. He couldn't help but remember what those scientists did to him and wanted to exterminate humans as revenge, but he ended up giving up on this idea when he saw that it didn't affect Warumono at all and started crying. This surprised Warumono, who wondered what could have happened. 2 days later, Warumono met the cat again and left him some food. The robot mentioned that he doesn't suffer from hunger and can't eat food. He asked if Warumono is trying to gain his trust. Warumono denied this, explaining that he just wants to save the life of a cat, as he wouldn't be at peace with himself if he let an animal die. The robot let the situation pass, and Warumono petted the cat. In the following days, he spent time with him, constantly charging his battery and making sure he was okay. Warumono remembered a conversation he had with Rooney a few hours earlier. He asked Warumono to inform him if he found something that didn't belong to Earth. Warumono was surprised by this and asked for his reason. Rooney revealed that they're not the only ones who want to conquer Earth. There are other species, even more dangerous and advanced than them. He said that there will soon be a great intergalactic conflict between different races to conquer planets, and Earth is likely to be involved. Warumono wanted to know why he didn't inform him of something like that. Rooney clarified that everything is just rumors, but he wanted to rule out any possibility. Back to the present, Warumono wondered if he should hand over the cat. The latter would finish charging and still doubted Warumono, but this time, he decided to trust someone resembling a human again. Warumono noticed how close the cat was to him and thought he was going to attack him, but he calmed down when he saw that the robot just wanted to be petted. With these actions, he thought that probably the cat was some kind of extraterrestrial robotic pet. Although it wasn't dangerous enough to be considered a weapon, he couldn't help but take him to Rooney. He asked if he wanted to accompany him somewhere. The cat agreed, so Warumono took him to the headquarters. The robot asked if he was from another planet, to which he mentioned that he never specified if he was human or extraterrestrial. Rooney would learn about the existence of the cat, so he looked for Warumono with a group of scientists. They would take the robot away. Warumono wanted to know if the cat would be harmed by the studies, but Rooney ignored him and left. He decided to wait for Rooney to finish analyzing the cat. It had been an hour since the studies began. He decided to communicate with him and asked if it would take too long to detect that the cat was a threat. Rooney explained that he needed about 2 more hours to determine that the cat was a danger. Warumono noticed in the call that the robot had been disassembled, which aroused deep sadness in him. He never wanted to subject the cat to something like this if he had known. He felt extremely guilty for what he saw. To distract himself, he continued with his work, helping several of his employees with some documents. The guilt consumed him as he constantly remembered all the time he spent with the cat. 2 hours later, Rooney asked Warumono to go to the science lab. He had finished the studies. Warumono, affected by the situation, went to the science lab. He had an internal conflict between his duty as a conqueror and his emotions. He never thought he could become too attached to the robot. Having seen the robot disassembled, he thought it was the end of its life. He knew he couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and mentally prepared himself to live with it. Once in the science lab, he was relieved to see the cat alive. He asked Rooney what he had discovered in the analysis. Rooney explained that he had only cleaned the cat and reassembled it after discovering that it was a non-life-threatening experiment. Warumono was upset about this and asked why he had to completely disassemble the robot. Rooney said it was necessary to extract the data. The dark-haired man asked what they should do with the robot. Rooney explained that the cat is actually a pet robot, so the right thing to do would be to take care of it. He entrusted Warumono with the task of looking after the cat. This surprised both Warumono and the robot, who looked at each other and discussed the idea. In the villain's tower, we see Warumono working on his computer, reviewing documents and preparing reports. He was really focused on wanting to finish quickly. When he completed a part of his work, he didn't hesitate to research everything about how to take care of a cat. He wanted to ensure he could provide the best care for the robot. Suddenly, unintentionally, he came across a report about the robot cat. C018 was developed as a weapon against humans. However, something went wrong, and it ended up becoming useless to its own creators. C018 wasn't supposed to be a pet, but for some reason, its size wasn't as anticipated, severely limiting its combat capabilities. Meanwhile, Rooney entered his office and found the cat locked inside a capsule. He greeted it and noticed it seemed quite lively. He asked if he could give it a nickname since C018 seemed too long of a name. After careful consideration, Rooney decides that Warumono should be the one to give it a name. After all, he is responsible for taking care of it. The cat asked Rooney if he would receive any benefit from staying with Warumono. Rooney mentioned that he wouldn't receive any benefit and certainly wouldn't have any pet responsibilities. He explained that he wanted to leave it with Warumono as a trial period, hoping there wouldn't be any trouble from setting it free. He warned the cat to be careful where it goes, as he installed a GPS and can track its whereabouts at all times. The cat decided to leave its capsule and asked Rooney to disarm and dismantle all its parts, but Rooney refused, saying it's a very valuable specimen. The cat started to complain and asked to be shut down. Rooney again refused, and the somewhat irritated robot asked why he wouldn't just turn it off forever. Rooney explained he wouldn't do it because the cat is special to Warumono. The latter entered the laboratory room, surprised to see it there. Warumono mentioned he wanted to visit the cat to offer it various options to choose from. Rooney asked if he wanted the cat to choose between life, death, or some method of execution, but Warumono rejected all those possibilities, explaining he wanted the cat to choose a bed it liked. He clarified that he sought advice from Trigger, but was refused cooperation on the matter. The cat allowed Warumono to choose the bed. He ended up buying a panda-designed bed. Rooney took the opportunity to inform Warumono that he would accompany him on the next mission. Warumono didn't pay much attention to this and left. Rooney looked at the cat, assuring it they had no ill intentions towards it. On the contrary, they wanted it to live a life like any other living being. After all, he knew its history because he examined it in the database. He asked the robot to stay with Warumono for the time being, even if it didn't want to. After all, if they both see that nothing works out, they'll have to deactivate it and store it in the base as just another weapon. That night, Warumono arrived at his apartment and placed the cat on the panda bed. The cat mentioned it felt forced to live there and refused to have a bed. Warumono ignored its complaints and asked if the bed was comfortable for it, to which the robot affirmed. Later, in the park, we see the boy waiting for the girl with pink hair to finally appear. He hoped to see her again. Warumono appeared in the park and joined the boy, mentioning it's a shame the tree didn't bloom this year. The boy, still hopeful to see her, told Warumono that she was probably too tired to bloom this year and hoped she would feel better next year. Warumono mentioned to the boy that she probably didn't notice his presence and advised him to wait as long as necessary for her. To cheer up the boy, He gave him some food and promised that next year they would have a picnic together. After this, he bid farewell to the boy. The boy decided to open up to the tree and told it that humans are very curious beings, making food in the shape of triangles. Warumono, though not human, thanked him for being a good person who helped him connect with the girl he liked. He confessed he wanted to tell her many things when she decides to bloom and wished to find a way to accompany her regardless of the distance. At that moment, a small flower on the tree started to bloom, and the girl returned. In the following days, more buds appeared on the tree, motivating the boy as he knew she would bloom eventually. He couldn't help but feel happy because he would see her soon. Some time later, we see Warumono in the park with the boy. The boy confesses to the dark-haired man that he plans to confess his feelings to the girl. This surprised Warumono, as he believed the boy had already done so. This made him wonder what they had talked about using the tin can phone. He advised the boy to start rehearsing how he planned to confess to the girl. In the following days, the boy followed Warumono's advice and began practicing his confession. He thought of many ways to tell the girl that he loved her and wanted to muster the courage to express his feelings without regret, although he couldn't help feeling somewhat embarrassed about love. Just then, the girl decided to appear, hiding to listen to the boy's confession. Upon seeing her, the boy was surprised but didn't hesitate to tell her that he loved her, crying tears of happiness. The next day, Warumono appeared in the park, finding that the tree had blossomed. He thought everything would be a fun picnic, but he couldn't help feeling somewhat uncomfortable as the kids left him in the middle of the seating. The boy asked Warumono to say something to the girl on his behalf. Warumono refused, explaining that it should be him who expresses his feelings in person, but the shy boy insisted. Somewhat irritated by this, Warumono told the girl that, according to the boy on the other end, her petals were beautiful. The girl was surprised by this and asked Warumono to send a response for her. Warumono acted as a messenger between them and told the boy that the girl thought he had very beautiful leaves. This made the boy happy, and he began praising the girl. Warumono had no choice but to continue being their messenger, sharing messages and emotions for them. As the hours passed, he became exhausted from this and asked if he could leave now. The boy gathered the courage to tell the girl that he loved her, and she cried tears of happiness. Warumono was relieved that finally both had mustered the courage to speak to each other without him being the messenger. Later on, in the Anohara commercial district, we see Warumono walking the streets on his day off. He suddenly felt the presence of the Red Ranger nearby and didn't hesitate to disappear. Using his teleportation power, he hid in an alley to remain unnoticed by him. Relieved when the ranger passed by, he was somewhat annoyed at the prospect of encountering Rojo and wondered what he was doing in the district. He didn't want to fight with him and preferred to remain hidden, knowing Rojo had been capable of detecting his presence in the past. Quickly, he decided to change direction and tried to find a place where he could be alone. However, on the way, he crossed paths with Rojo again and didn't hesitate to hide. He wondered how it was possible they kept meeting, as he had made sure to divert himself 3 stations away from Rojo. He wondered if Rojo could somehow sense his presence from such a distance. He considered going somewhere else to enjoy his day off, but throughout the day, he kept encountering Rojo everywhere. This included the ice cream parlor, the shopping center, and the crowded street. Warumono was starting to get irritated by Rojo's presence and considered handling the matter personally. When he let his guard down, Rojo appeared in front of the dark-haired man to greet him. Warumono returned the greeting and tried to control his anger. Rojo mentioned he still had the umbrella he gave him some time ago when it rained. He confessed he wanted to thank him for that and for all the times he had given him directions to important places. He pulled out a bag and handed it to Warumono. Warumono took it and checked the gift, curious if Rojo was planning to trap him or something similar. Rojo said no, explaining he had been lost in the city, and when he saw him, he thought it would be a good idea to give him a gift. He promised that if they both were on duty, he would defeat him. After this, Rojo left. Warumono checked the gift, being somewhat surprised that he had given him panda-shaped cookies, and praised him for having good taste. At the ranger's base, we see Rojo returning after giving Warumono a gift and encountering Rosa. She asked him to accompany her for a while, preferably in silence. Rojo followed her and found Azul asleep next to the twins in the exact same position. They were completely coordinated in posture and breathing, which surprised him. Rosa asked him to mimic their position for a video, and he agreed, asking her why she wanted the photos. Rosa explained that she wanted to send a cute photo to Black. Knowing he liked that kind of thing, Black was in his office, sleeping from extreme tiredness. He received Rosa's message and saw the photo, feeling happy upon seeing it. However, his happiness was interrupted by the voice of an artificial intelligence, asking him to retrieve his suit because the enemy was starting to make alarming moves. At the same time, we see Warumono gathered with all the members of the villain's organization in the office. Rooney gave the signal that they could start the operation. Warumono decided to gather all the top villains, and they prepared to head towards the Grand Canyon. There, they encountered the Ranger. Rojo greeted Warumono and reminded him of the promise to defeat him. All the Rangers brandished their weapons, but Warumono surprised them by summoning the top villain. Rojo was astonished that he was serious. Warumono took advantage of this to descend from the hill they were on and engage Rojo in a one-on-one fight. They exchanged blows, with Rojo being at a disadvantage. Black became concerned and didn't hesitate to go help Rojo. Trigger intervened, wielding his firearms and shooting at Black. Verd quickly created a barrier to protect Black from the shots, saving him from certain death. The rest of the top villains attacked the Rangers to wear them down. Rooney observed the entire fight and analyzed it to detect their weaknesses. Azul noticed this and used his bow to shoot at Rooney, trying to stop his analysis. Rooney dodged the arrows and hid to avoid Azul's ability. The fight between the villains and the Rangers remained evenly matched at first, until the showdown between Rojo and Warumono escalated. The entire battle ended in a powerful energy explosion that destroyed the Grand Canyon. We change scene and see Warumono in his room, waking up after that battle and preparing to go to work. He had breakfast accompanied by the cat and went to work. Afterward, he enjoyed his day off, visiting the zoo to see the pandas.